Okay, so flexibility. How do you guys feel about your flexibility? Any feedback?
Not great.
Not great. Not good. Cool. That's why we're here, right? Lacking in flexibility.
Compared to other yogis, like not quite there.
In the world of yoga, yeah. Well, so it's important to understand the difference between mobility and flexibility. So flexibility is, there's active and passive, but oftentimes we refer to it as more of the passive kind of flexibility. Like if someone were to just go into a pose, that's kind of their resting length of their muscles, right? And it'll be pretty deep, or however you want to describe that. So when we think mobility, it's more so, what do you have the strength and the stability to support? So for example, there's certain postures where you might be doing a back bend and you have to flex your muscles to get your foot towards your head, versus if you were just like folding backwards and letting gravity kind of stretch you, that's just more flexibility. You're just seeing the length that already exists in your body rather than supporting it with a muscular contraction, yeah? So with our flexibility and mobility, they really intertwine. So today, we won't be just working on flexibility or just working on mobility, they're interwoven. I think that that's the most effective route, is a combination of different types of movements. The really important thing when it comes to flexibility is to focus on your alignment more than the depth of the pose. So sometimes we get so attracted by these extremes, these yogis that are just able to like fold in half like a noodle, and you think that that's what the pose should look like on your body. But your body is a different body, and it's going to be unique and it's going to look different. But none of us can progress throughout our yoga practice if we end up getting hurt by trying to crank ourselves into this pretzel pose. So if we want to have a long and happy practice, then it's important to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. It takes a long time, and it happens gradually. But with yoga, using the breath and utilizing tools like heat, we can expedite that process a little bit. So throughout our movement today, with everything that I introduced, we'll kind of keep an open conversation. So unlike a normal class where you try to kind of like keep quiet and let the teacher guide the flow, please speak up, and please, if something doesn't feel right or something is really painful, or if it just doesn't feel accessible for your body, be like, hey, help, what's going on? Yeah. So I want to focus on, there's 5 main postures that have kind of inspired this towards me, because I noticed they're, I guess you could say, problem postures for a lot of people. So our monkey pose is what we call our splits in yoga. So with the one leg forward, other leg back, and trying to just increase the range and get the hips lower to the ground. That's something a lot of people get really tight in, mostly because of the hamstrings and the psoas. Also our forward folding with both feet together as well as with our legs wide, trying to work on our flexibility here, getting into the hips, getting into the low back and the groin, and then our back bending. So with our camel pose, this is the one where we work on getting our hips forward, right, and eventually bringing our hands back. And then our wheel pose, which is pressing up from the ground, the big back bend, right? So not all of those poses might be accessible to us, but those are the poses that will inspire the movement today and kind of help us target those specific areas. And just please, please, please know that, like, safety first always. If you have an injury that you're working with and something pushes you too far, back off, back off, back off. Yeah? Okay, cool. So let's start today down on our backs. So lay down nice and flat. Good. And just take a moment to reach your shoulders down and away from your ears, lengthen through your spine. Bring your hands, palms facing down, and I actually want the soles of the feet flat on the floor. So bend your knees for me. Good. Now bring your heels maybe a foot away from your sit bones and your feet hip distance apart. Now imagine that your feet will not move from this location. And if you're familiar with skiing, right? Skiing, we have 4 edges. So imagine that the inside of your feet and the outside of your feet is like an edge. So bring your hands just a little bit wider so that your thighs don't press down on them, and let both of your knees go towards the street over to the left. Keep your feet where they are. Keep your legs parallel and then transition towards the parking lot, shifting over to the right. Let your shoulders and your head completely rest. If there's anything on the side that's in your way, feel free to move it. And I want you to keep the knees parallel and keep shifting from side to side. This is a mobility warm-up. This is something we did a lot in gymnastics. This is a very gentle way to massage the low back, to loosen up the hips. And you can do this as slow or as fast as you prefer, but the goal is to imagine that invisible space between your two knees, keeping that parallel relationship, just bringing awareness into the hips, into the knees, into the ankles, into the feet. And you might be able to go really far. Maybe you can even press the knees down towards the floor as you start to warm up a little bit more. And connect with your breath. The breath is a very powerful thing when we work on our mobility and our flexibility, because it allows us to warm the body from the inside out. I want you to take about 2 more on each side. Just really feel your body shifting. And if it feels good to gently shift your head from side to side, we can do this as well. Gently waking up your neck as you shift from side to side. And this is your time to tune into your body. Check in with yourself. When you finish your last one, pause in a neutral position and scoop both of the knees up into the chest. Grip the front of the shins and pull them in close, knees together, big toes, heels together. Roll your ankles out like you're taking your toes and creating a circle. Both toes go the same direction. Articulate through your feet and change direction. Good. Really lengthen through your spine. Can you lengthen through the back of your neck, bringing your chin down towards your chest just a little bit more? Take a deep breath in. As you exhale, bring both hands to the right shin. Left leg extends long towards the top of your mat. Press your left heel down into the floor. Flex the ankle. See if you can actually touch that foot to the floor, even if the knee needs to bend a little bit. And just pressure down, down, down into the mat. So active flexibility here. Pull the knee in with the arms, and now start to press the knee away with the strength of the glute. So this is an isometric contraction. So both hands stay interlaced on the shin. You're pulling with your arms towards your body. You're pressing with your leg away from your body. Just feel this build heat in the hip a little bit. You can grip the back of the knee if that feels better to you. Good. And then allow that right knee to open out towards the armpit, slipping around the side of the ribs. Really pulling it towards the shoulder. Press the front of your left hip open and up towards the ceiling while the heel drives down. So notice we're really activating here. We're trying to keep the shoulders and the head resting. Good. Gently take your right leg and allow it to cross your body's midline towards the street. Arms come wide in a T position, spinal twist. If you'd like to bring your left hand to the outer right thigh to inspire down, you can. If that knee is really floating up high, we can take a block. And we can place this block under the thigh. Give you something kind of to rest on here. If you feel like the low back feels a little vulnerable. Just take a few deep breaths here. Trying to relax in your low back, relax in your spine. Good. Now gently draw yourself back to center, come onto your back. Scoop both of your knees into your chest. Take a deep breath in, lengthen through your spine, lengthen through your neck. Hands to the left shin, exhale, right leg reaches towards the top of the mat. Flex the ankles, press the heel down into the floor, open up the front of the right hip. Pull the left leg into the body, pull nice and tight. Lengthen through the neck, try to settle and ground down through the shoulders as much as you can. And then start to pull a little bit deeper and find that isometric contraction. The leg presses away from the body, arms pull the leg towards the body. So there's a muscular activation here. You can roll your ankles out if you want to add some additional movement. Just take a few deep breaths. Maybe activating your Ujjayi breath if you're familiar with this, that active exhalation. And then take that knee out towards the armpit and shoulder, letting it move around the side of the ribs. A little bit of external rotation here. And you can give it a tight hug, or you can be gentle and just hold the back of the thigh. One more full breath in. Use your exhale to spinal twist, bringing that left knee across the body, arms come wide. If you use blocks on the other side, we can transfer them over here as well. We might notice a difference from one side versus the other. And just breathe. Lengthen through your spine. Maybe the chin decides to look opposite of the knee. Maybe the arms extend long. Whenever I'm stretching my spine, I always think of the limbs reaching away from center. Trying to find as much extension through the body as possible to lift up out of the joints rather than dump into them. Good. Take one more breath in. Exhale, return yourself to your back. Bring your knees into your chest once again. And now I want you to round your spine like a ball and start to rock forward and backwards like a kid playing around. If you have any sensitivity in your tailbone or spine, feel free to just do this once and then rest. And then see if you can come all the way up to sitting on your tail. Okay, good. Now, where we're going next is we'll come to our belly, but I challenge you to see if maybe, just maybe, we can rock to a squat. So see if you can scoop the heels under the body and transfer your weight forward. And then if you want to be fancy, you can either hop back and lower down, or if you're like, forget that, not today, maybe you can take a more gentle transition. I just like to be a little playful. So take your transition of choice, take your time, no rush. Nice. Good. The more you kick those heels under the butt, yeah, good. Good, and find yourself down onto your belly. So I really want to begin with our spinal movements today. So find a Sphinx pose while you listen here. So rest on your elbows, with your elbows under your shoulders. The arms are parallel. Good, and try to prop yourself up like your elbows are like a kickstand. So instead of resting down low at the chest, get a little bit more lifted up. Good. So when we talk about bending in our spine, there's three segments of the spine, right? Our lumbar, our thoracic, and our cervical. Our lumbar, we only have 5 vertebrae, and they don't move a whole ton, but that's where a lot of our flexibility lies, is in between the lumbar and the base of the thoracic. The thoracic spine is your middle spine, or a lot of us refer to it as your middle and upper back, and this is defined by the vertebrae that are attached to the ribs. So because they're attached to the ribs, that means that whenever you get anxiety, whenever you're stressed out, whenever you overexert yourself in cardio, we can hold tension around the rib cage, and that's why that part of the back is so tight. So a lot of times when you look at people do back bends, they're dumping into their lower back, and we don't see much curve happening behind the shoulder blades, behind the heart, and so on. And then the cervical spine is defined by your neck. You can feel, if you reach back, that there's like a little bone that pokes outwards right at the base of your neck. That's your C7. That's the first bone of the 7 vertebrae in your cervical spine. So the reason I'm telling you all this is when we curve our spine, we want the curve to be equally shared throughout. So instead of pivoting on one joint or one small area, we're trying to open within 5 spaces. So imagine we're doing like a wheel pose, big back bend. Our hips have to be open, our low back, our middle and upper back are thoracic, our neck, and if we're doing anything weight bearing with back bending, then our shoulders all of those things can be a team and work together to bend equally, then we shouldn't be causing any inflammation in the body. Inflammation comes from dumping into those joints. So use a gentle back bend like our Sphinx pose here to tune into your neck, your shoulders, your back, your hips. So reach your feet away from your head and vice versa. And make sure that we aren't curling in the back of the neck, but I want you to keep the cervical really long. Plug the shoulders down into the torso, press the hip bones down into the floor, and gently activate your core. So you're kind of just pulling everything in towards your center. Good. Now from here, come all the way down to your belly nice and slow, and bring your hands to frame your chest. We'll go through a little cobra flow here. So take a deep breath in and lift up just a little, like 6 inches. Exhale, start to come down. Make sure that those shoulders stay low. We'll do this 4 more times. Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. Now really think of lifting your sternum, that bone in front of your heart that connects your ribs. Inhale, lift your heart. Exhale, lower down. Last one. Inhale, lift up with a little bit of pressure through the palms. Hold and see if you can maybe open a little bit more, but I want it to come from the upper back. Imagine there's a bar under your shoulder blades and you're trying to bend around it. Good, and then come on down. Good, take a little rest. Maybe turn your head to one side for a moment. You can rest the hands. Now, we're going to do another round, but we aren't going to use our hands. So whenever you feel ready, return face down, and I want your hands to just hover above the floor. If this hurts your belly or chest at any point, you want to bring the hands down, that's okay. So engage through your back muscles. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower down. Keep the feet on the ground. Inhale, lift, let me watch. Exhale down, press the tops of the feet into the ground. Inhale, lift. Exhale down. Inhale, lift. Exhale down, last one. Inhale, lift, and we hold. Hold it. Now stay here. So your neck is nice and open. Good. Reach through the back of the neck. Beautiful, you guys. Now see if you can lift a little higher. When you really try, when you really focus, can you engage your back muscles a little bit more? Keep reaching the head, keep the feet on the ground. I know they want to float up. Keep them on the ground, keep them on the ground. One more breath, and take a rest. Lower down, make a pillow under your forehead with your hands. Give yourself just a moment here to feel how this is such a simple and small movement, but it is active. And what we find a lot in our bodies is it's very common for people to be tight on the front of their body. We call it the anterior chain. Versus the back of the body. Think of all the forward folding we do in yoga, right? But we throw a back bend in there and everyone can go like this far, right? So by strengthening our back side, it helps us stretch our front side. So now I want you to keep your forehead resting down on your palms. Let your feet separate about as wide as your mat. And now we're gonna warm up our glutes a little bit, and this helps in opening the hips. So keep the legs straight, take a deep breath in. As you exhale, press down into the hip bones, lift both of your feet and knees off the ground. Good, go ahead and lower down, and I want you to follow your own timing. Do this 4 more times on your own. Take it as slow or as fast as you need to. And trying really hard to not take over with the low back. So feel it coming from the glute crease, from the under butt, right? Where the hamstrings and the glutes connect, rather than arching in your low back. So we're trying to isolate this movement. Really good. Really good, really good. Good. When you finish your 5, show me that you're done by bringing your feet together. Good. So once your feet are together, now I want you to lift 5 times without letting your big toes or your heels separate. So imagine that you're holding a piece of paper between your feet and you're trying to lift up 5 times here. Now you're gonna notice this is a lot harder. And if you need to bend the knees a little bit, or if it's hard to get the knees off the ground, that is perfectly okay. But we're working on strengthening our posterior. So take your time. Remember, this is different for everybody. Good. Now, once you've finished doing 5 with them together, just hold still so I know you're done. And you can separate your feet hip distance apart when you're finished with those 5 lifts. Now, let's lift our legs individually. So I want you to lift your right leg 5 times, and what I really want you tuning into is bringing awareness into which muscle is lifting the leg. Is the low back lifting the leg? Or is the glute and the hamstring lifting the leg? I'd like it to feel like it's coming from the glute and the hamstring. And keep the spine totally relaxed. Do 5 on each side. Take your time. Go as slowly as you need. So we're tuning into our activation to help us with our active flexibility and mobility. Really good, you guys. Really, really good. Now, pause when you're done, laying on your belly, and separate your hands to come to frame your chest. Put your chin on the ground. Now tuck your toes under, and pressing into your chest, can you stick your butt up in the air and scoot your knees closer? Maybe you're able to look forward and draw the shoulders down in a way. Now this might be enough of a stretch for you, or maybe we can go a little deeper. And just see what this feels like, feeling the stretch in the neck and in the upper back. This can feel really uncomfortable if you're tight here and you're not used to it. So you can modify by just gently lowering the knees more, but try to keep the neck straight to the best of your ability. Yeah, and then just decrease the size of the arch if it's too much. Depending on how comfortable you feel here, you might be able to tuck your toes under, feet hip distance apart. You might be able to lift your knees off the ground. That is totally up to you. This can be intense. Be gentle with your neck. Good, and then lower down. Come flat. Make a pillow with your hands for your head. And gently roll your head from side to side, just loosening up the back of the neck. This can be a bit intense. Good. Okay, now let's take these 2 blocks of ours. Okay, now let's use these blocks to make kind of just a little platform for ourselves. And I personally just do it like this, but if you're sensitive, then the blanket on top will make this even extra comfortable, just more cozy for you. And what we're gonna do is the same exercise, but by having these blocks elevated, most of you probably felt that that was uncomfortable on your neck a little bit. If you're not used to bending in your upper back like that, it feels pretty awful at first. And so we have to kind of baby step ourselves into it so that we don't cause inflammation and so that we don't accidentally injure ourselves. So take your hands down in alignment with like the bottom corner of these blocks and see if you can bring your chest down, down, down. So you should be able to rest the front of the shoulders, the front of the chest here. Now, see if you can start to look forward using the muscles in your neck. Starting to look forward and lift your heart. Reaching long, long, long. Taking the pressure out of the chin. Scoot the knees further back. If your butt's too high up in the air, you won't be able to make this adjustment depending on your flexibility. And once again, imagine that there's a bar under your shoulder blades and you're trying to lift through your sternum and look forward, bending around it. And if you start to get lifted up pretty high, you might be able to bring your knees closer or even to straighten them up. We'll take one more breath here. Now as you exhale, lower the knees down, come into a child's pose. Rest your head on this little structure that you just made. And turn your head from side to side. Now take this blanket off of your blocks and take these blocks to go behind your heels just a little bit wider than your hips. Cool. Now come up with your arms, inhale. Take a moment to stack your knees under your hips. Now our first big pose is our camel pose. So I like to do something called camel sweeps. So just see first if you can maybe reach back and maybe tap that block. Maybe the block's at its medium setting, or maybe you decide to take it to its highest setting if that's too far away. It's okay if they twist a little bit while we're doing one side, yeah. It's okay if they twist a little bit. We're just finding the measurement that works for us. So do this a couple times. Tap one side, tap the other side. Keep your hips kind of pressing forward. And think of lifting up and out of your hips. So trying to keep lots of length in the spine. Good, now we're gonna add kind of a pretty little flow to it. So come down to sitting on your heels. Now reach one hand back. Take a deep breath in and sweep the opposite arm over to one side. Hips go forward. Start to open your hips, lift your heart, and as you exhale, retrace that circle. Drop the hips. Balance through the center. Transfer your hand to the other block. Inhale, open up the other way. Exhale down through center. Inhale, open. Exhale down. Inhale, open. Exhale down. Inhale, open. Exhale down. Inhale, open. Good. Now exhale down one last time. Inhale up. Exhale, hands to the low back. You can place your fingers pointing down or your thumbs pointing in. The grip is your choice. Now, with every breath in that we take, lift up and out of your hips, out of your knees. And with every exhale, we start to press these hips forward a little bit and lean the heart back. Notice we're pushing on the low back to support it. I want more of the opening happening here in the front of the hips and in the upper back. So start to lean the heart back, inhaling up out of the hips. Exhale back. Now this might be really gentle, it'll look like this, or we might get a little bit more extreme and start to lean back into it a little bit more. You might feel like you can reach back and touch a foot. Good. Take one more breath. Exhale it out. Inhale tall. Exhale, sit. Take a moment to just neutralize your spine. You can shift side to side. Now we'll do this one more time, and I'll just show you first the full expression of our camel is eventually we work our hands back to touch our heels, and then we're in just this big back bend shape, right? But we have to be gentle with the lower back because it's another really common injury area. So if you start to feel any pain in your low back, that's your body saying back off, yeah? So that's why we can use these blocks and we can keep our hands here. If you're here and you're like, I don't really feel much pain in my low back, I think I could probably go a little bit further, then you can see if you can maybe touch your blocks, and then maybe you can see if you can touch your heels, and if you're able to touch your heels, then maybe we can try to go a little deeper. Maybe the head starts to go back, maybe the hips press forward a little bit more. We always want to walk ourselves back up until we get really, really strong to come and like create a more flowy transition out. So we'll be a little bit more robotic until we get really comfortable. So without being guided through specific timing, try your camel pose and just see where you're at with it right now. So like I said, even if we're just barely arching back, as long as you're feeling something in your body, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what the shape looks like. It doesn't matter how far we go, but just keep lifting up and away from your hips and keep pushing your hip bones towards the wall in front of you. Good. And take about 5 breaths here. Nice, you guys. Nice. Good. Yes. Really good, you guys. Breathe. Nice, Matt. Good, good, good. Press those hips forward, forward, forward. Lift them out, lift them out. Yes. Beautiful. When you finish that 5th breath or when you've had enough, just very gently walk your hands back to your lower back. Inhale, reach up really tall, and then take a child's pose real quick. Be gentle, come down, stretch it out. If you want to shift from side to side, if that feels good to you, feel free. Keeping the back of the neck super long. Good. Now for this next portion, we're going to do our big back bend at the very end once we're a little bit more warm, but we're going to come into our leg stretches now. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let me ask you guys this. Are we okay with partnering up? Like, are we okay with someone helping us to stretch like a fellow student, and then I can help someone? So if you have a partner or a friend at home, the most effective hamstring stretches are when you use someone else as a tool. So let's break it into groups of like partner A, partner B. So raise your hand if you want to be partner A. Just raise it. There we go. You 3 up front. Cool. Okay. 3 other people flock to them and another person come to me. Freedom of choice.
We're close together, so, you know,
Cool.
this will work.
Okay, cool. So partner A, I'm gonna have you be partner A. So partner A is actually gonna lay on their back, and I'm going to be demonstrating. So I'm gonna be like the stretcher, and she's gonna be like the stretchy. Yeah. So lay down on your back. Yeah. Lay down on your back. Clear any props. So we're gonna get into our hamstrings. Now, what we're going to do here is you'll lift your right leg up in the air. Good, and I'm just gonna come behind, and I'm kind of using my body as a brace. So before I even press into you and stretch deeply, we're gonna do some active flexibility here. So notice I'm holding her heel, doesn't hurt her. If I'm holding her calf or her ankle, that can hurt a little bit more. And I'm gonna post up her elbow, or my elbow to my hip, and now I'm gonna tell her to push into me. I want you to push me away as hard as you can. I promise you can't hurt me. Good, now just relax and feel the quadricep and the hamstring working really hard. You're gonna hold it for 3 breaths. So 3 deep breaths, push, 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 push. Breathe deeply, let me hear you breathe. Push, 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 push. Yes, good, good, good. Even harder, even harder. Good, and then after the 3rd breath, we relax a little bit, and then we can go a little deeper. We're gonna do 3 rounds on each leg, and then we'll switch partners, okay? So I'll continue to do this with her. You find your partner and just communicate and ask, you know, is this too much? Does this hurt? Do you want me to push harder?
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, now you push it down. And push as hard as you can.
Pushing now?
Good.
Yeah.
And breathe.
And then breathe.
One more breath. Push, push, push. Good, and then try to relax. And it's okay if the knee bends when you relax. Yeah, it's okay to let it bend a little bit. How does that feel?
Are you pretty flexible?
Do you want me to go further?
Okay. Is that?
I've been doing it.
Okay, no, push
Yeah.
just a little. Yeah. Push, 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 push. And breathe.
Good.
Okay,
Good, and then relax, and I just want
Wow,
you to
you're really
bend and
flexible.
straighten
Does
this
that hurt?
leg a couple of times.
Yeah, like
Next one, straighten, bend, and straighten.
and then push. Are you pushing?
Is it?
Yeah.
That's great. It was like
Does this side feel a little tighter?
I'm glad you're
A little bit?
my muscles is.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, that's what's fine. So you just feel really clearly what it to me if I
feel like you're
Okay, so let's start off just really hard.
Like I'm pushing. I don't know how to put it. Other side?
Yeah,
Just
that's good.
pushing. Keep going as hard as you can.
What side do you want to do first?
We do both sides?
Yes, both sides.
Okay.
Both sides and then switch.
Let's see.
Okay.
This one's
Tighter.
And then relax completely. Let me push your little deeper.
Let's see. Okay, everything feels good. Feels like
Try
we're really
three breaths. Oh, it's a little stronger. Good. Try really hard not to let the hips lift off the ground or anything. Good, and then relax.
How's that feel?
Go a little
so bad.
Is that good?
Ready, I'm gonna push, we want to push.
Good. So this
Okay.
is called PNF,
Nice.
which stands
That's
for
not bad.
pseudo-neuromuscular
I
facilitation.
feel like it could go.
So we're training our
farther.
brain that we aren't gonna injure
Yeah, it
ourselves
feels
if we
okay.
go a
Okay.
little bit longer.
Yeah, cause
So,
it's really good.
Alright.
So it's very good for you to just do some more mobility real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is-
Do you mind if I do that?
Oh, yeah.
Am I supposed to be pushing back?
Yeah, you're supposed to have it.
Mhm.
Do your
It was-
Yeah,
yeah.
there
we go.
It's especially like in the hip flexors and quads. But what's
I like
nice
you.
about using
I know, I
PNF
like
is
you.
that
Okay, so right
and you
leg.
don't, like, even if someone were to help you, you don't have to push
Push
back.
to start.
That's just a way
Yeah.
to warm the muscle more. But the benefit is that you can actually relax when you're doing the stretching part rather than trying to hold your own leg up. Like when you're pulling with a strap, you're straining your shoulders and stuff. So yeah.
So in practice, is it helping to use the strap?
So if you were all by yourself, then yes, you would use a strap and you would pull. But it's just if you do have a buddy and you're like, hey, can you push my leg towards me? Then you can relax and it allows for the brain to calm down. Because a lot of stretching is mental. Because if you're not feeling comfortable, then your body tenses up. So, and also so I was just explaining to her, we call this PNF stretching. You can do it with yourself too, like if you were grabbing and pushing your leg and pulling. It's pseudo-neuromuscular facilitation. So it's literally training your nervous system that it's okay to lengthen a little bit longer and that you won't injure yourself. So big benefit there. So once you guys are done, we can go back to our mats. This is like just a little hamstring warm up before we get into some other stuff. Nice. And did anyone feel their muscles like melt into it just a little bit deeper? Yeah, you get that little like chihuahua quiver. It's all-
She only did one side, can we finish?
Oh yeah,
the
no,
other
take your
side?
time, take your time.
Okay.
No, you're fine. We're not in a rush.
Start this good or? Oh, no, that's good. Okay.
So what I'd like you to do just whenever you're done, and please don't rush, ladies. You guys are totally fine.
Cool. Thanks.
Sweet. So just find yourself on your mat like this. If your knees are sensitive, we are gonna be on our knees for a good little series here. So bring a blanket underneath you. Okay. Now take your right leg out in front once you do get here. And use these blocks. So your hamstring should feel a little bit warm now. And while we just wait for everyone to get on the same page, just start to stretch this hamstring. So maybe that means moving through the ankle, moving through the hip. Nice, ladies. So we're just, yeah, no, that's good though, because you don't want to rush stretching. That's oftentimes why it's not effective. They're like, I stretched 5 minutes today, and you're like, it's not even enough time to get your body warm. Like, how is it gonna do anything? So when you're here, something I find really helps is there's a lot of really dense tissue around the hips, especially if you have scar tissue going on for whatever reason. So moving the leg independently of the pelvis is really helpful. So you can do internal, external rotation, and you can feel that it's gonna be a little tighter when you go in one direction than the other. You might find that you have little tight spots in relationship to the position of the leg. And you'll also notice that when you flex your ankle, it pulls the hamstring to its more extended position. It hurts a little more. And when you point, it takes pressure off. So slowly just start to inch your way down toward the leg and see how far you can drop your chest and your head until you can't move this foot and ankle around anymore. And eventually we can settle into holding still and just allowing the upper body to melt towards the lower body. You can bring your hands to the ground once you get low, depending on your level of flexibility. So this is where the breath really comes in. Take 5 deep breaths, and I want to hear you breathing like no one else is in the room. Deep breaths, maybe releasing out the mouth if you need to, and think of pulling your sit bone of the leg that's extended forward towards the wall behind you. So think of this hip drawn back and up, yes. So you almost get traction, like you're keeping the heel where it is, and then the low back is pulling the hips back, just to lengthen that hamstring a little bit more. Good. And then flatten your front foot and shift your body weight forward, bend your front knee. Find a low lunge. Find a low lunge. Maybe your hands come up to your knee. And make sure the ankle stacks underneath the knee. So we're deeply bending in that front leg. And then bring your hands up to your kneecap. Now, you'll notice that your low back is probably kind of arched right now. So pull your belly button towards your spine, tuck your hips a little bit, and then press your hips forward. So you should feel the front of that hip opening up and expanding, and press into the top of your back foot. Really press down into that foot. Activate, activate, activate while pressing forward. So there's a lot going on, even though it does not look like much. We feel the tailbone reaching down. We're lifting up out of the hips through our waist, and we're really pressing into the floor. Good. Let's take 3 more deep breaths here. Maybe closing your eyes if you feel you have the balance and stability to. Breathe. Last one. Good. Now take these blocks forward to align with the front foot. Depending on your flexibility, we might be able to bring the hands to the ground, but scoot your right foot to the outer edge of the mat. Or if you're doing your left foot forward, your left foot to the outer edge of the mat. Good. Now, see if you can take that left hand down. Now, we may or may not need a strap for this depending on our flexibility, but whatever arm is on the same side as the front leg is gonna reach back. And then you're gonna see if it's possible to grab hold of that back foot. Now, if you're like, no way, Jose, then this is where our strap comes in handy. We can take this strap around the back ankle, and we can try to hold on to the strap before entering into the pose, and then we enter into the pose. Yeah. So wherever you are, settle in. Now, if you feel enough of a stretch as is, then hold here. But if you think you can go a little bit deeper, maybe that back elbow even starts to bend and pulls that heel closer to the butt. Good, I'll come around to help you guys. So we want to feel the stretch here in the front of the quadriceps. So we're actually going to switch our hands. We're going to hold this with the other hand. Yes, there we go, perfect. And then this hand, yeah, a little easier to balance, right? And the more you shift your weight forward, the less weight on the kneecap. And if you want to reach down the strap more, I'll hold it for you so that you can choke up on it a little bit. There you go. You feel it in the front of the thigh? Perfect. So we're really breathing into that quad, and if you can press your hips forward while pulling the strap, then that's great. Here, let me help you choke up on it a little bit, reaching down more. There you go, nice. Nice, you've got a little more flexibility in there, reach a little closer. There you go. Good, here, you too, reach a little closer to that foot. Reaching down, down, down. Good, breathe. Good. Now, avoid the slingshot effect. Release that foot gently, lower it down, and then start to return to your half monkey or your half split, which is this one. The very first ham stretch we did after partner. So this is our half monkey. So for some people, if this is hard to straighten the front leg, then this might be what you're working on. However, we can start to progress into a deeper posture by scooting the front foot further forward and the back foot further back. Tucking the toes under of the back foot, lifting that knee, and we can progressively start to lower down. Now, this does not mean being flat. This means working on your own body wherever you are today, but the challenge is, unlike other forms that utilize the splits, we don't let the hips twist. We keep it really square. And if the front knee needs to bend, it doesn't need to be locked out, but we want to feel the best stretch. So ideally, we're feeling a little bit of a stretch in 2 places, both the hamstring and the front of the open hip. So just breathe, really breathe. Sometimes we notice that when it hurts, we hold our breath. Keep the energy moving. We're gonna take 5 more deep breaths here. You can take hands off your blocks if you feel like it, but just keep reaching that open hip forward. Keep pressing down through the back foot Can you activate in your split? Good. Now, if you can walk your hands a little bit closer to the ankle, maybe see if you can scoot your blocks or your hands up just a little bit. We're gonna go a little deeper into that hamstring. Be gentle, be careful, know your limit. But the more that we move our hands forward, the more we feel it in that hamstring, because it starts to put more weight into the hips rather than weight into the hands. And if this is intense for you and you need to bend and straighten that front knee, mindfully moving through it, and that's fine. 3 more breaths here. These look really good, you guys. Beautiful alignment. Very nice. Now start to walk your hands or your blocks back towards your hips and help yourself to a child's pose. Take your time to transition back. Bringing your knees down, sitting your hips towards your heels. These scrubby mats, man.
Yes. Great.
I know.
And I think of mashing my hips, kind of like, you know how if you were to like mash potatoes, just kind of shifting around, feeling the difference between your right side and your left, and just taking a moment of recovery. With flexibility, what we're really trying to do is nurture our body and our mind to feel comfortable, to permit and allow us to go deeper. Whenever you're ready, we'll start on the other side, bringing our blocks back to their highest setting, bringing the other foot to extend out in front of the body. Finding our half monkey or our half split. So once again, when we find this position, we'll start to move through the ankle. And keep in mind, we will be doing that quad stretch, so if you use the strap, just to have it nearby. And once again, think of the hip that's attached to the leg that's forward, pulling back. You really want to plug that thigh into the socket. And work on some internal, external rotation, rotating from the upper leg. If you need to be on fingertips on these blocks, this can be a great way to give yourself a little bit more height. Loosening up some of this dense tissue. And anytime that you cannot tolerate a stretch, that's when we add the movement. That's when we start to bend and straighten and swivel and pivot and all these things, because it allows us to stay in the movement without injuring or overexerting our body. And then pause that leg and then just start to melt your chest down. And you might stay where you are if that's enough of a stretch, but if you want to feel it a little deeper and you're feeling pretty mobile here, then maybe the hands come to the floor. And just take a few deep breaths. Last breath. And start to bend that front knee, start to flatten the front foot, transfer your weight forward, low lunge. Make it so that the foot stacks under the knee and the hands come up to the lower thigh. And then once again, if you recognize that there's an arch in your lower back, gently engage your core and tuck the tailbone to reach down towards the mat. And then start to press your hips forward towards the front wall as you push down into the back foot. So the more pressure you give into the floor and the more that you lift in and up through your lower belly, the more that we'll feel that psoas open. Our psoas are also referred to as our hip flexors. It's the same thing, hip flexors, just like our more casual kind of slang term for it. And the psoas is really interesting. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten sciatica. Has anyone gotten that nerve pain? It's caused by this muscle, the piriformis, which happens in the low back. The psoas attaches here, really big actually. Then it goes down through the pelvis and it attaches to the upper thigh in a really small little piece. And it's responsible for lifting the weight of the entire leg, which is why this muscle cramps when you do those deeper folds and stretches. So from here, bring your hands down to the ground and start to scoot that left foot out to the edge of your mat, and the right hand is down. Now, feel your psoas reaching. Feel the front of the hip reaching down, 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 down. Now, lift up your back foot and see if you can take hold. Use the strap to set yourself up. Yeah, there we go. Good. Nice and comfortable.
So stretching will help prevent those cramps?
Yes, absolutely. So the cramp comes from the muscle either being strained, weak, or tight. Normally it's a combination of all three. So think of how often we sit in a chair. So all that sitting, that muscle gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And then we do something like, hey, lift the weight of my 15-pound leg. And the muscle's like, why? And then you get this horrible cramp. And that sciatica is caused by pinching, the nerve getting pinched from tension in the muscle. So the more that we open up the front of the body, the front of those hips, it can really help our nerves that run down the legs. Keep pushing those hips forward. Good. Take 3 more deep breaths here. And then start to retract your hips and avoid the slingshot effect with that foot. Come back to your half split using your blocks to support, bringing that foot back to center. And this is where we have the option to go into our monkey pose. So if you feel like this is enough of a stretch for you, if you have a lot of sensitivity, then just stay here. But if you feel like you can tuck your back toes under and start to scoot that back knee further behind you, we can start to separate the knees, but keep the hips facing the wall in front of you. So there's almost this internal spiral kind of feeling where the front hip is pulling back and the back hip is pressing forward. The inner thighs are pulling towards each other. Very challenging to get flexible in this posture when we keep strict form. So if you're feeling like, man, I'm way off the ground, that's okay. This is a hard stretch. This is a very hard stretch. I've literally been training diligently to get better at this for like a decade, and I'm still not flat all the time. It's hard. It is hard. Breathe. We're gonna stay here for 5 more breaths. And if this is intense, bend and straighten that knee, or start to move your toes, wiggle your toes, flex and point your ankle. And the more that you breathe, the more heat you bring to the muscle, the more elastic your muscles will feel and become. And you'll be able to relax into it a little bit deeper. If you feel capable, if it feels safe, maybe we start to walk our hands towards that front foot. If this is enough of a feeling, if this is enough stretching where you are, then stay there. But the more that those hands walk forward towards the foot, towards the ankle, we feel it deeper and deeper in that hamstring. Last 5 breaths. Try to relax in the other areas of your body. Make sure you aren't tensing your neck or shoulders. Make sure you aren't tensing in your rib cage, in your spine. Try to relax everywhere else. Last breath here. And then help yourself back to child's pose. Gently walking the hands back if we need to. And then enjoy this much earned, much deserved rest. Bringing your forehead down to the mat, maybe mashing through your hips a little bit. Sweet baby Jesus, we did it. And hopefully you feel a little bit more balanced out on the right side versus the left side now. Maybe turning your head from side to side. Sometimes we become really tense in other areas of our body in reaction to that stretch pain. But as I said, the more that you do these types of stretches, not only are we stretching our muscles, we're stretching our fascia. And our fascia is like this saran wrap layer that's laid over the muscles under the skin. This is the thing that we get knots from. Knots are in the fascia. So sometimes you feel what's called referred pain. meaning even though you're stretching your legs, you feel it in your upper back or your neck. And this is because it's all interconnected. Let's take 3 more breaths. And just remind your body that you love it, that you're not doing this to torture anything. Now, let's bring our feet both to one side. Start to lift your chest and sit up. And we'll bring ourselves down to sitting. So, work on your core with me just for a moment as we lower down. Lowering, 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 and then lift back up. Inhale, open. Good, now I want us to do this same movement, but with a block. Do you have a block nearby we can grab? Take it at its widest setting. And I want you to, instead of gripping with the fingers, see if you can activate the chest and shoulder muscles to keep the fingers open, but press in. Take a deep breath in, open up. Exhale, halfway roll down. Inhale, press in on the block, open up. Exhale, lower down. So this is absolutely mobility, which is why it feels a little bit more challenging. Inhale, coming up, pressing in on that block. Exhale, let's twist down to the left side. A little bit of obliques here. Inhale, coming up, pressing open and up. Exhale, down and over to the opposite side, over to the right. Inhale, coming up. Exhale, coming all the way down. Good. Bring your block to the floor. Lengthen through your spine, lengthen through your neck, and align your heels with your hips, in line with your sit bones. Now take this block that was next to you that we just used and place it between your thighs. We don't want it to be super close to the groin, but more towards the knees so that it doesn't hurt. And then press your palms down. Take a deep breath in, lift your hips open and up. And then start to walk your shoulder blades a little bit closer together. Now take a moment to feel your hamstrings kind of pull on the bottom of your feet, like your knees are reaching towards the big toes. And then your glutes and hamstrings are helping your hips towards the ceiling. Try not to overly squeeze your butt, more hamstrings here. And then reach your heart and inflate your chest, reaching your heart towards your chin. Good. Let's hold here for 5 breaths. Now bring your fingers to reach up towards the ceiling. Come up onto your tippy toes and then start to tuck your tailbone under and see if you can roll down one bone at a time. The hips come down very, very last. Good. Now this block is here because when we go into our bridge or our wheel pose, what happens so often is when there's tension in the spine, we try to compensate with the hips by letting the knees bow out to the sides, but we want to keep strict alignment in our yoga practice. So we keep the block here until we think we can hold this posture without it. So if you feel like your inner thighs are pretty strong and you can keep the awareness and the block's bothering you, you can take it away. Now, just give me a raised hand if you're like, what the heck is wheel pose? Just give me a hand raise if you don't know what that is. So we all know what the big back bend is, right? So with our back bend, let me have you guys just look towards me for a second and I'll show you our progression to get into it, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So from here, Say my blocks between my knees. First, these wrists have to be stretched. So you may need to take a second to kind of stretch your wrists, stretch your hands, and the muscles underneath, because we do require pretty deep flexion at this little joint. So hold here for a moment, take your time, and when you're ready, bring your fingertips to reach towards your shoulders. So think of like our chaturanga position. We're doing the same position, but we're elevating the elbows and the scapula. Once the hands are placed, we can ground down through our feet and lift our hips up. From here, we put weight into the hands and we see if we can press ourselves until the top of our head can rest on the floor. So this is a nice checkpoint. And if we feel strong enough to come up out of this, we can start to straighten the arms and shift the body weight over the wrists. This is our wheel pose, or our reverse bow. Okay? So when we get into this posture, the main things that happen is either A, the arms aren't strong enough to press up, or the wrists aren't mobile enough to get into that ideal position. Also, sometimes we see that just everything starts to bow out. The arms will roll in, the legs will roll out, and then we're like, oh, my low back hurts because I just did that. So you might stay at a bridge pose and work on stretching your wrists here, and that's okay. The next step is to come to the crown of the head, and then the next step is the full extension. I can spot you on this, but I'd like to see first round where we're at on our own, and then we'll do a second round with my assistance if needed, okay? So on your own timing, lay on your back, get your hips up, use the block if you desire.
Are my feet in the right position, or should they be closer?
I think they're okay. I personally don't like them super close. I like, you can always walk them in if you need to. Yeah.
Which way am I supposed to walk?
Yes, good. So ideally, we want to push just the armpits a little bit forward. Yes, elbows rolling in, beautiful. And then if you want to bring the feet a little closer, you can. But I want you to pull them in, point your big toes straight forward, feet a little bit more narrow. Can you bring them more narrow? Yes. So good, you guys. So good. Good. Just take a few breaths and then listen to your body and come down when you need to. Good. So let's do this. Let's use a strap. Those feet are slip and sliding. So if you guys want to look over here towards Matt, we can use our straps for both the arms and the legs also, if you're noticing that kind of bowing outwards. Like this, yeah, and now give it a try for me. And let the feet be a little bit wider, and really spread your toes and like grip down into the feet, yes. There we go, push out into that strap, push out into that strap. Now just rest the crown of the head, nice, nice, good. And then put your hands on my ankles.
On your ankles?
Yeah, grab my ankles, grab my ankles.
Okay.
Now push up. Yes, so good, so good, so good. Breathe, just a few breaths here. Where do you feel it the most?
Mid-back.
Mid-back, okay. Try to lengthen through that area as much as you can. Good, and then slowly tuck your chin to your chest, lower the back of the shoulders down, 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 down. Yes, so good. Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, now, who would like assistance with this posture? Anyone want spotting? And if you're like, I feel pretty good, then see if you can get the shoulders to reach over the wrists and work towards straightening the legs eventually. So we can come into straightened legs. And I'd work on, that was really good, but the hands wanted to turn in a little bit. So see if you can get a little external rotation, and that'll give you more power to push with your arms, because I think you have plenty of strength. It's just the alignment a little bit. So point those big toes to point forward for me, Natalia. There you go. There you go. And then lengthen, 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 and try to straighten, try to straighten. Yes, good. Good, good, good. How do we feel here? Yeah? So do you want to go deeper? Yeah. Okay, so can you put your hands on my ankles? Nice. Okay, now you're not gonna hurt me. Push down as hard as you can. Keep lifting those hips. Keep lifting those hips. Keep lifting those hips. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, lift, 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 lift. Can you get the crown of your head towards the mat? Good. Let's hold for one deep breath. Beautiful. Tuck your chin to your chest. Very gently lower down. Yeah. That's a big back flex, huh? Hey, that was really good. Really good. Nice. How do we feel here in this posture? Rotating out. Okay. Grab on my ankles. This feels a little bit better. Okay. Now start to press up, pass through the crown of the head position first. Good. So ready? We're gonna start to look up. Good. Now push into my ankles. So you need to use your arms here. Push down, push down. Good. And we come up a little bit more. Push through your arms hard. Push. Good. And then chin to chest, bring it down nice and slow.
Oh my lord.
Yes! So good. So good. You guys are killing it. Okay. Give yourself a good rest. Do you want to try to go deeper? Okay, let's do it. Down those ankles. Nice. Now start with your bridge pose. Very good. Now really push down into my ankles. Push. Amazing. Push harder. Push a little harder for me. Let's take a deep breath in. And lower it down. Hey, so good. Everyone got their backs off the floor. Woo-hoo. Yes. So, it's impossible to reach the epitome of flexibility in a single class, but hopefully you feel kind of equipped with some tools and some information that can help you practice this stuff and not have that question of like, am I doing this right? Is this safe? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? So hopefully this helps in that aspect. As our cool down today, I want to do our folds, our pike fold and our straddle fold, just to kind of hold for a longer duration, a little bit more yin style. So depending on your flexibility, you may want to use your blocks in front of you to get cozy. If you want to elevate your hips a little bit, if you're really tight in your hamstrings and your lower back, or you want to sit on a bolster or anything like that, feel free. And we'll start with our straddle fold first. So we'll just bring our legs nice and wide. And you can use your blocks to create a platform to rest on. This makes it kind of a more cozy yin posture, but depending on your flexibility, you may not need those blocks at all. You may be able to come all the way down. So wherever you are matters not, but you should just feel a stretch in the groin and in the hamstrings, and we should be able to find a position where we can really just kind of settle in. So if you're wanting to use these blocks for a platform, you can do a lot of different things here to give a little rest. Yes, good. And once again, if you're feeling really tight, and if you ever are in a stretch and you're like hating life, if you're ever feeling like aggressive or like you're gritting your teeth or it's just really uncomfortable, wiggle around a little bit, add some movement. This is how we get our nervous system to kind of calm down and get comfortable. Something I like to do a lot in this straddle stretch specifically is I kind of tick-tock the shoulders, and that loosens up the lower back a little bit, which in turn helps the groin and the inner thigh muscles relax. I'm just gonna stay here for about 2 minutes. So whenever you decide that you wanna stop your moving and go back to holding still, I welcome you. And another offering. So, like Matt, this might be a really good option for you. When you're really tight, it can be, you're like fighting yourself. You know, you're trying to use your muscles to just hold the stretch, and that kind of defeats the purpose, right? So using the wall can be a way to experience the more passive side, where you can completely relax, and you're more likely gonna make progress here better than if you're straining really hard to feel the stretch. So if you want to use the wall, I encourage it. You can come up here too if you want. You can even take my arm if you want. And this is where the breath really does its work. Just closing your eyes, tuning in. Yeah, use that wall. You can go right up there if you want. If you want to use that blanket under your hips, you can place that there. Just get really cozy. the wall is an attractive option. Just breathe. And when we're forced to sit still with ourselves like this is really when mindfulness can help us, or that busy mind can work against us. Your thoughts manifest action and change in your body. So if your thoughts are busy or impatient or dissatisfied or anything of a negative nature, then your muscles, your nervous system feels that and reacts to that. But if you try to clear your mind and remind yourself to soften, to surrender, to release, then that grip on your muscles starts to settle. And maybe we allow our breaths to come out of our mouth, almost imagining as if water is trickling down your chin. We call this our water breath. On your inhales, lengthen. On your exhales, melt deeper. Take 3 more breaths. And then if you're on the wall, we can contract our inner thighs and just bring our legs together. If you're on the floor, we'll do the same thing, but just move your blocks and bring your feet together. So we can take this forward fold stretch on the wall just the same. And this is a great place to stay. Yeah, you can stay here for the last stretch if you're on the wall. And if you're on the floor, we're just folding forward towards our legs. If you're sitting on your hips, you can grab your strap if you want to help pull. If anyone on the wall wants the strap, just let me know and I'll bring it to you. Want a strap? Do you want a strap? So this is a passive stretch. So if you are up against the wall and you don't feel any type of stretch from this, you can use the strap and pull. Okay. Or you can choose to return to the sitting position and fold a little bit deeper. Okay. The thing is with the wall, if we are flexible past 90 degrees, then we don't really feel it as much. But if we're still working on getting to that 90 degrees comfortably in a passive state, then the wall is a really beautiful tool. So if you place it over the arches of the feet, that might feel a little better. And this is more passive, so yeah, you can pull, try to keep the tailbone down. Yeah. Also, if you'd rather do a sitting position and fold forward rather than being on your back, you can. So in yin yoga, we call this sitting version caterpillar. And if you really relax into it, oftentimes you'll feel it more in your spine than in your legs. It's okay to soften the knees a little bit. Deepen your breath. And soften. They're doing so good. And we targeted, what I consider to be kind of the major flexibilities, the back bending, the folding, and the splitting of the legs. So it's not a instant gratification journey, and the more technical you get, oftentimes, the more you realize how much you have in front of you to tackle. But it's really fun getting really comfortable in your own muscles and in your own body. The more that you understand your body and what you're feeling, and you can identify that, you can keep yourself safe and have a long, healthy, flexible, mobile yoga practice. Do you guys have any questions about anything that we did today?
I understand that there's totally like too far or too much, where you're out of alignment and all that.
Mhm.
But is there such a thing as like stretching too often, just like throughout the week?
For sure. So that's a good question. So with flexibility, the thing is ideally, we don't want to stretch so hard that we make ourselves sore. However, it does happen sometimes, depending on like how eager you are to work on a pose. Like it's easy to accidentally overdo it. If you ever notice yourself sore from stretching, give yourself a day or two to recover. Because what can happen, and we experience it a lot in like circus arts, is if you don't give your muscles time to recover and heal, it's like a rubber band that like snaps back tighter. Do you know what I mean? So you have to go through that process, just like when you're strengthening your muscles, you have to let that tissue and those muscle fibers heal. So if you're doing a more gentle stretching practice and you get into the habit of doing it daily and you're not feeling sore from that stretching, you could do it every single day. But the more extreme postures, take a break after. So if you feel sore after today, take a 2-day break of like not really pressing hard. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a good question. With mobility, you could do that every day. You could do, this stuff, all that every day. But say you do that hamstring stretch with a friend where they're doing the PNF, you might be sore from that. You probably shouldn't do that every day. Otherwise, you're gonna notice that you might hit a plateau and you're wondering why it's not getting better. You could potentially tear something or have like, a small rip or burning pain going on. So if you feel soreness, back off. Yeah, cool, good question. Any other questions?
How often, like after a workout, how often should we stretch? How long should we stretch for?
I stretch before and after normally. I'd say before is more important because sometimes stretching deeply after a workout, although your muscles feel really warm, it can make you more sore because you're like doubling up, But if you're doing weight-bearing strengthening exercises, the more that you increase your circulation and your blood flow, the healthier your muscles and joints will be. You'll likely have a better workout, and you might even feel that you're able to lift heavier or to have more endurance in what you do. So stretch before, if you can, like those mobility movements, that's really great. If you're doing like weightlifting or whatever, lots of that, lots of this, and folding and stuff like this is all really, really great to do. And then if you want to do it again after, if you're eager to make flexibility gains, then do more like yin postures, where you just kind of hold still and kind of rest in it for a little while, take advantage of the heat in your muscles. Yeah, really, really good question, really good. Yeah, I forget, it's like something that people don't talk about this very much. I love it. I think stretching is like a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole of fun exploration. But you guys did amazing today. Everyone did really good. So I'm gonna post this on YouTube. My channel's Move with BK. So if you guys want to like refer back to anything that we did today, or even like see what she looks like, then feel free.
I'll watch you guys.
I'll watch you guys. Right? And you just listen to my raspy voice talking to you guys about yoga the whole time. But yeah, good job. Yay.
Thank you very much.
It's a wrap. Wait, we should do come here. Let's do a photo. Gotta take advantage of this thing because this thing's cool. Let's do a little light. Whoa. Whoa, we're fancy. What?
Good lighting.
Right? I'm like, which one should we do? Maybe this one? Okay, come closer, come closer, come closer. I gotta be able to press this little thing, so we gotta really bring it in. Okay, everyone's faces.
I'm too tall to be in the front. I'm too tall to be in the front.
It's always
Okay, ready? Ready? Wait, we're missing someone. You gotta get in here, you two. Here, crouch down, over here. There we go, there we go, there we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yay! Cool. All right. Yay. Thank you guys.